I'm going to talk today about eco-social design and complexity theory. Social design is looking at the field of social systems, economic system, political systems, our institutions, our rules of relating, our cultural paradigms of how we relate to each other. And these are man-made rules that we've created over the centuries for our society to interact with each other. But because we've created them, we can also rewrite these rules. Eco-social design is looking at how these social rules and economic rules are also interacting with the environment. And right now, our eco-social design rules have come to a kind of crisis state in the sense that the rules we've designed, especially for our economic system, have led to a lot more environmental collapse. So this field tries to look at how we might rewrite these rules and look at the systems thinking, concepts behind these things to kind of guide our system to go back into harmony and health. Complexity theory is a field that's kind of emerged out of multiple fields, from physics to biology to ecology to social science, which looks at the ways multiple agents, multiple systems interact with themselves. And then as they interact, different types of behavior emerges. And it kind of came out of a whole bunch of different fields, from systems thinking to cybernetics to condensed matter physics, where they're looking at phase transitions of multiple atoms and other particles interacting with each other, and there would emerge different types of behaviors. So for instance, water molecules, if they interact at a certain temperature, will form liquid, and then interact at a different temperature, you just change that temperature and it suddenly becomes an ice, and it's suddenly not moving. So that's an emergent behavior. And it's a bottom-up behavior because there's no one from the top down kind of causing the behaviors to say it has to be a certain way. When Adam Smith discovered the invisible hand of capitalism, that is an example of a complexity theory, in the sense that there was no top-down person or government kind of guiding the whole system, and by kind of creating property rights and ownership principles, and then this idea of money exchange for services and property, you can emerge different types of behavior. And so supposedly different types of laws like supply and demand curves would emerge out of this. So it's an emergent behavior. It's not written in full. A canonical example that's recently kind of discovered was looking at the behavior of birds. So birds will often move in these rather complex patterns, and sometimes in V shape, sometimes as there's a predator, they'll move into these patterns to avoid the predators. And so the question scientists were wondering about, was there a leader, was there one bird acting as leader guiding every other bird in a certain direction, or how are they forming these different shapes? And a similar thing was happening with fish, which would form these complex swarms and schools of fish. And they were wondering, was there a fish that was the leader fish that was telling every other fish? And a similar thing with ants. It was the termites having a plan from a smarter termite that was guiding them to build all these termite mounds. And what they discovered in all these cases was no, there was actually just these rules of interaction that then would emerge these complex behaviors. So in the case of birds, all they would have were these simple rules like, I'm going to try and stay a certain distance from other birds. And a simple rule like that would actually cause a whole flock to emerge rather interesting types of behavior. And similarly for the fish, and similarly for the termites too. Like you just would have these communication systems of leaving a smell when you discover something cool, and then the other termites would follow. And so simple kind of communication patterns would lead to complex behaviors. So when we're looking at social systems, the question is, can you actually just change certain simple rules of behavior, and rather complex new forms will emerge in civilization and in our societies? So let me give one example. There's something called nonviolent communication, which was developed by Marshall Rosenberg when he was in psychology grad school. And he discovered a system of interaction with people where you didn't have to get into arguments so much. You would actually look at the underlying needs in the situation and create space where both people could have a sanctity in their needs and their feelings, and then there's empathy around these needs and these feelings. And if you create that space of empathy of listening to each other, you would find a lot of conflicts would resolve themselves. So he, for instance, went into certain tribes that were killing each other in Africa, and did this nonviolent communication process, and they became friends after. And he's done that with gangs in Detroit, who are killing each other and so upset because they'd murdered a member of their gang, and got them to be at peace with each other. And so, if you kind of have these processes, if, for instance, these nonviolent communications processes were a common way that everyone interacted, it would actually cause a lot less crime and a lot less conflict, and you would actually need certain different types of laws. You might need a lot less policing and a lot less laws against certain types of behavior. And so you would actually also emerge a different type of legal system and a different justice system. In fact, what it births is a kind of restorative justice system, where instead of just throwing people in jail, you actually bring people together to listen to each other and kind of come back into harmony after perhaps one person has harmed another person. But you're bringing the whole social system back into harmony. And so you don't have, say, the dad or the mum being thrown in jail and then throwing off the family. By doing the restorative justice, you don't necessarily have the person having to go to jail and then throwing off all these other systems. So that's an example of a way you can kind of use the idea of changing the relationships between the agents in the system to birth new forms. In terms of relationship with the land, there have been birthing certain paradigms, for instance, like permaculture, which looks at ways we can actually garden and do agriculture in healthier ways. For instance, if we grow monocrops like a lot of modern agriculture do, or we till the soil, it actually throws off the microbes in the soil and it doesn't get so rich. So there's ways to kind of garden which actually preserves the whole biodiversity in the soils. And as you do that, there's actually these microbes connections with the humans, and scientists are finding that people living in more rural areas or more connection with plants, the immune systems will be improved and they'll have less diseases. So by creating a different ecological relationship with the earth for humans, like if we're actually living closer to the earth, less in these sheltered, air-conditioned buildings that are separate from the earth and in bitumen-paved roads and high-rises and urban environments, but we create a different ecosocial structure to live more in tune with the rhythms of nature, we also find our health improves. And that can shift the whole health structures, like the whole health hospital structures. There's a lot of kind of synthetic materials and toxins that are actually injected in your bodies. Like cancer treatments in hospitals, like they found hospitals actually cause cancer. And you might be going to the hospital for cancer, but there's all these problems with cancer causing toxins and other things in the hospital itself. So if you actually change your relationship with the ecology, you actually might emerge different health structures, for instance. There's also ways you can kind of live in community with the land, which then creates kind of more localized economic structures. Our economic structure, while capitalism is kind of complex, emergent system, it also has run into certain problems because people don't all know each other, and like there's certain people that accumulate a lot more money, and so they tend to have a lot more power than, like maybe 10,000 times more than another person have the 10,000x amount of money, which it creates these imbalances in the system. And often someone will be on their own trying to make money, but not realizing the effect they're having on some other person, because they don't realize all the ripple effects of the supply chain and the production costs and the sweatshops. And so our economic systems are missing a certain feedback loops, and the feedback loops is what drives the health of a lot of these systems. So we actually need feedback loops at different size scales to kind of rebalance the system. So at a local level, and then at hyper-local level, at a local level, at a kind of like a city level, we need these feedback loops. The system needs a certain kind of, almost like a certain sense of self at each level. But we've lost a lot of this local feedback loop. So we need to kind of build community again, because by seeing someone in your community, and if you have empathy and a relationship to them, you can help them when they have problems. So if a Walmart comes into your your town, it doesn't necessarily have empathy for all the inhabitants, and you may not give them a discount or free goods if they're having problems. But a mom and pop store with more relationships, maybe they have a friendship with a certain person, they might give them a discount or even free goods, knowing that maybe they lost their job and they're temporarily in financial dire straits. And there's also a way of living in community and with the land in certain eco-villages and intentional communities where the people are working together, they're exchanging services, and they're finding, oh, they have something wrong with their car. Maybe there's a mechanic that they know in the community that can help them, or they need a massage and they can help each other. And so it creates a way to kind of get these services from each other, even if perhaps you might not have money, because maybe the massage was $60, but if you've created a system of friendships where you're helping each other, then maybe there's a barter, or maybe there's a system of time bank, which is a way of kind of just exchanging hours within your community. And so someone does something, then someone else can help someone. So there are ways to create different economic systems at more local and hyper-local scales, which rebalances the system. And also, there's an evolution of society over from more top-down hierarchical methods to more kind of bottom-up processes over time. And so it used to be, we used to have more dictatorship, and then we evolved to more democratically elected. So the government is a little bit more bottom-up, but there's still kind of a certain top-down, command and control system. And then we still have the CEO structure in a lot of companies where the head says it, and then other people have to behave. But we're moving to more facilitated structures, and now there's a tendency to listen more. So like in the past, coaches of sports teams would be a lot more authoritarian, but now they actually listen to the players, because there's an evolution over time to more bottom-up systems. And so as we evolve to more bottom-up systems, we need ways of bringing people together to listen to each other. So we need facilitation methods like appreciative inquiry is one example, or World Cafe. These are systems where people listen to each other and then emerge ideas of how to guide the system. And there's ways of governance which are more participatory budgeting and allowing the collective to emerge laws for the group. So to summarize, ecosocial design is looking at a lot of these non-hierarchical structures, different ways of changing our relationships and changing our relationships with the earth to create a more harmonious system. And there's ways all these ecosocial designs can look at the fields of complexity theory and systems thinking to kind of inform the design of these structures.